Welcome to the Yellowjackets Hive. I'm Media Melanie here with.
And I'm Emily.
Yellowjackets Hive is presented by our partners at cordcutting.com. And today we have a special guest, one of the staff members from cordcutting.com, who's here to talk a little bit about the topic of play and Yellowjackets. So without further ado, we've got Nicholas joining us. Hey, Nicholas.
Hey, Melanie. Hey, Emily. How's it going?
Hello.
Great. Thank you for joining us. We kind of went back and forth and went over some different topics and arrived at one that's really fun involving play. So we're excited to dive into that. But before we do, Emily, why don't you would you rather Nicholas?
Okay. Would you rather play a soccer match against Thaisa or a high stakes card game against one of the teens?
Okay. Now, are we talking like how high are the stakes? Is this like in the show, like when we're pulling cards?
I'd say more, let's go with money high stakes in this aspect because I feel like nobody wants to pull a card and die. So
yeah,
we'll go with like large amounts of money for the sake of argument here.
Okay. Well, I would probably say that Thaisa is probably a beast, and well, I know that she is, and she would absolutely wreck me on the field. My card skills are probably also a lot better than my soccer skills at this point. So I would say definitely a card match against the team as teens.
Yeah, okay. I would say the same.
Same thing. I would never want to go up against Ty in a soccer match after what happened to Allie's leg. No, thank you.
No compound fracture.
She's probably the most competitive one out of all of them. So I think I would be the most afraid of going up against her in something like that for sure.
I feel the same way.
So, Nicholas, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and why you chose the topic of play in terms of the show Yellowjackets?
Yeah, so I have been a PhD student for a while, and I actually just finished my dissertation this summer. The top, yeah, it was a long road. And so what I have done in this dissertation is I look at video games and play as sort of conceptual categories, and I use those to reinterpret medieval French literature, actually. So something very different from Yellowjackets. But I think what this has got me doing is just thinking about how play appears in all sorts of media, Yellowjackets notwithstanding. And so, for instance, like my first chapter, I look at feminist game design, and I understand, or I seek to understand how games can also be sort of reclamative, reparative, and empowering for a lot of people. So looking at play and games as a tool to, maybe not a tool, but as something that occurs in normal human life, from the Middle Ages up until 2023.
Right. And games keep changing, but yet the concept of them essentially stay the same. I mean, there's always a winner, a loser, and there's typically rules of play when you're playing. Let's explore a little bit more about how that specifically ties into Yellowjackets. Of course, they start out as a soccer team. And we definitely saw a big shift in going from a soccer team to the way they're interacting with play and their social structure in the second season. Talk to us about the element of soccer and the Yellowjackets and how that evolves into other types of play.
Yeah. So obviously, the thing that comes to the fore here is that the only reason that they're going on this trip is to go to nationals in Seattle, right? And so from the very beginning, we have this sense of community with these young folks, with these emerging adults, right? This is where I am interested in now, in terms of like where they are in age, in high school. What a rough time already for most people, so when you have this tight-knit community that already has some factions within it, some of its own divisiveness and troubles, seeing how that changes into a life or death situation, how that continues on or just morphs, right? So the first thing I think of is how they play at sort of a type of society, right? So they're lost, stranded in the Canadian Rockies. And, when I was their age, I had no idea how to do anything survival related.
Like nothing.
Me either.
Same.
Unless it's a 4-star hotel or something, right? No. And so here you have these young people and they have a coach, but as we know, Coach Ben can't really do all that much. So in terms of this little society that they've created, they have to come up with their own rules. And we see that change over the course of the series. So I'm interested in seeing how playfulness has a real serious side to it in this show, especially when we got to the second season. Before then, just thinking about all the ways that these emerging adults have to become full-fledged adults while still dealing with their normal teenage issues. And so just that interplay between, trying to live a normal teenage life. And I often think about one of my favorite episodes is Doom Coming. And
ours too.
Yeah, exactly. And I think seeing such like an exuberance, even if it's drug induced or shroom induced, whatever, that is really nice to see how that pairs with the doom and gloom of the rest of the show, or what can be doom and gloom. I think thankfully the cast is really great at bringing subtle humor in ways that I really appreciate.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I also think about Laura Lee, rest in peace. And one of my favorite video games actually is Microsoft Flight Simulator. I love just getting in a plane and flying around. And I often think about Laura Lee and how she tries playing at mechanic and tries playing at pilot, and it doesn't work. I mean, it's so tragic, but I think that's a moment of play where she is trying. And when I say play, the definition that I usually use is free movement within more rigid structures. And so they've all found themselves both really restricted, but also with limitless space. So there's no structure, but they have to create the structure that they can then sort of wiggle around.
Absolutely.
That's right. And, back to Doom Coming for a second, the manner in which they make Travis being the stag and then, of course, chase him. I mean, that too is a game, you could argue, a game of tag or a game of cat and mouse, or view into all different activities they're doing out there, which you could always put many of them into this box of play in terms of your definition.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if I may, that relates directly back to my own research, right, with the Middle Ages, which a lot of medieval literature has great descriptions of hunting scenes. And this hunt, right, that was a way that medieval society, or at least the aristocracy, sort of structured themselves. And so the hunt was sort of the main form of play for those folks. So I think that's such a great point.
And then, of course, the way it evolves moving into season 2 with them picking these cards, which, cards are a form of play, but now they're stepping up into this whole new world of being a life or death game. We didn't get to see the scene where somebody actually put this into play. So it's...
Yeah, I was going to ask, if you had to guess, who do you think was the one that suggested that they even use the cards to determine who gets sacrificed next?
That is a great question. My gut instinct is to say Misty, just because.
Okay.
She is one of just my favorite characters.
Same.
And I feel like she is such a good game master from the beginning. Like when she destroys the black box, just the way that she is playing with everyone's heads. I mean, the way she plays with Ben for the whole thing. I mean, it's just,
Jessica Roberts too.
Yeah.
She's it's like a game of cat and mouse for her when it comes to Jessica Roberts.
Yes.
Yeah, I meant to mention that as well. Absolutely. A really sick game of cat and mouse.
Yeah.
Oh, it's interesting to have this element of play, which you typically look at as a free-spirited, movement or something fun, and then going into this very serious card draw game where it's a game for their life. It really juxtaposes the fun and lightness of play with the darkness of the trauma and how that helped them arrive at this. Quite an evolution from season to season.
Absolutely. I feel like that's a natural human response in some ways to a traumatic event, as we try to distance ourselves, or, over time we distance ourselves from that. But, for these soccer players, for these young folks, their plane is right there. They can't really leave their site of trauma. And it is just so interesting to see something so fun turn into something so sinister.
And one could also argue that them being out there is like one big real life game of Survivor in the first place.
And I think with most games, it usually requires a combination of chance and skill.
Yeah.
If we think of their survival as, a game, like you said at the very beginning, there are winners and there are losers. And we already have a clear sense of who's probably going to lose this game. We have some definite losers already. But I'm very interested to see who might come out on top. Who might, and also think about is that something we're rooting for? Also, do we want a winner?
As a hunt without violence feed anyone. You're looking at the hunt as a game. It's just so interesting, the forces of light and dark that come into play with the concept as a whole.
Absolutely. And the hunt doesn't end when they're adults. It just keeps on going. And even I think of Misty again in her citizen detective group, that she's playing at detective.
It's a game. You had also talked a little bit about free movement and exactly what that means to a group of people who are isolated from the structures that normally scaffold their lives. In terms of the free movement, what are your thoughts on that? Limiting in terms of, the confines of them being trapped out there together? Do they have free movement out there, or is all of this now in the confines of the game?
Oh, that's a great question. I would say that their free movement is when they're establishing this society. I feel like it's interesting because it feels so opposed. They both have limitless freedom in terms of space, but in terms of movement, hierarchically, socially, they can't really do much. And I feel like, we see it in the first season when Taissa says, all right, I'm going to go find civilization. There's that's the objective of the game, right? Is let's find civilization. We got to find other people. And we see, the Oregon Trail, right? One of the oldest video games.
Yes, love the Oregon Trail. Oh my God. It's on Apple Arcade now, which is really cool.
It really?
I played it on Apple Arcade. Yeah, it's like a new school version of it. It's really cool. Yeah.
My partner loves Oregon Trail. They're faced with probably dysentery, loss of limb, as we know. I think we start to see some mental illness that pops up as a result of these struggles that they're dealing with. And
Major
also
struggles.
Starvation, right? That's a big deal. So the hunt becomes both literal and figurative. And it's almost as viewers, it feels like a game of whodunit also.
It does.
We're not necessarily trying to find out who, but what? What has really happened? What is really going on? I mean, as a viewer, I'm still confused about the wilderness.
I think we all are. Yeah.
So it's just, and if I were to think of this as a game, if I would want to produce and market to someone, I would absolutely use the little logo.
The symbol.
The symbol, yeah.
The symbol. Yeah.
I would put that right on the front, and it would, I don't know, it makes me think if this would be a game I would want to play. If we turned Yellowjackets into a video game.
Right. Yeah. Or a board game for that matter. I mean.
It might be a more provocative board game, I think. It might be
I'd play.
Oh, I would totally play. Oh my gosh. Hey, speaking of board games, we had a chance to interview a bunch of the Yellowjackets cast, and we got some insight into their personal like of board games when they're not filming. So we're going to play this clip. It's a little long. It's about 3 minutes, but it's well worth it. You'll see where it's going. So let's watch the clip.
Ooh, okay. So we're kind of big escape room people. So we love going to escape rooms. Yeah. So a bunch of the cast, we've done that a few times. And also, we're also board game people. So we stay in a lot. I won't lie.
We love playing board games. So most hangouts, honestly, would be like if we weren't going and doing like escape rooms and stuff like that, would be just chilling in and like playing Exploding Kittens and Yahtzee. We love games. So I think those would have to be my favorites because it's just so chill and nice. Like at the end of a work day, you're just inside and we're all quite homebodies. So it was nice to just hang out with them in that environment.
Was there like someone that dominated the board games, like a winner every time, like someone really good?
Everyone is so competitive. Samantha's really good at this game called Chameleon. Samantha's really good at that. Kevin is very competitive. So he's really good at like Exploding Kittens. But every once in a while, we'd all like, at least win one round of something. Yeah. But no, Kevin is very competitive. Yeah.
There's some board game playing too. We hear that Kevin is maybe the most competitive out of everybody. Would you both say that that's accurate? Or is there somebody else?
You should ask Nia that question.
We're talking to her tomorrow, actually.
Nia once made a comment. I don't know what time we were playing it, but Nia once made a comment that I was the only competition. So she was like seeking to get me out. And she, but then she would just go after me and I would keep losing. And I'm like, Nia, I don't think I'm the only competition here. So in my mind, I think Nia, because Nia had it out for me for some reason.
Nia's
was the only competition.
Yeah, she's quiet.
Kind of like a backhanded compliment there.
We talked to a couple of the cast members and they said that you guys were like super into playing board games too.
Oh yeah.
That, Jenna said that like you were actually quite competitive with some of the board games that you guys played.
Yeah, I may have ripped a card because Exploding Kittens is one of our favorite board games that we will play together, and it's like someone would have to like take your card if you put it down, and I didn't want someone to take my diffuse card. It was a long story, and so I like pulled it back and I ripped the card. It got very intense very quickly. I don't like losing, and we're a very competitive group, I'd say. A lot of us.
Yeah, Nuha had told us Kevin was the most competitive, and then last night Jenna said, "Well, you might want to ask Nia about it because she's pretty into it."
I would say me, Jenna, and Kevin are all not so great when it comes to being pretty competitive. And Samantha too. Samantha can also be pretty competitive. She's really good at almost every board game that we play.
Yeah, Nuha said that too.
Not only, is there this element of play on the screen, but also off the screen, they all love playing these board games.
I need to find out what this Exploding Kittens game is because they all brought it up when they talked about it, and I've never heard of that game before.
Never played it. Have you heard of it, Nicholas?
I have, and I played it a couple times, maybe like 5 years ago. So it's been a while. It is fun. I would recommend it.
Okay. Maybe that's something we need to do with our patrons or something sometime, is have an Exploding Kittens game at one of our hangouts. That could be fun, really on brand. Play in itself being something that's prepositional, something that means a lot of different things depending on the context. And we see that a lot in Yellowjackets. The context keeps on shifting according, to what's going on. So do you have any other insights into the prepositional nature of play and really how it culminates in Yellowjacket?
So I will say that my favorite preposition with play is with, right? So to play with or to play along with. And so what I loved was seeing at the end of season 2, and I'm not sure if it was the final season, but when they're all at Lottie's cult location, and I think it's in upstate New York. So when they're all there, and you can just see them like sort of arrive at the hill, and they're all coming out to do like that final face down where I think, unfortunately, Nat is killed. And so just, so sad.
I know. I'm still haven't come to terms with the fact that we will not be seeing her in the next season. It's devastating.
Yeah, I'm convincing myself that it's not real, that she is just, she just took a little nap.
Yeah.
But seeing them play with each other and fall back into sort of similar patterns, like as adults, you can see how they play with one another, like they were still on that soccer team, like they were still, and that's what I loved about that little clip that you just showed, was seeing how like people who are so competitive with one another ultimately end up working with and playing with each other in really supportive and generative ways. And I know it's a little more complex in Yellowjackets. There's a lot more at stake, I think, than a game of exploding kittens. But I just love seeing, I'm really curious to see what the next step is, and maybe what new rule is going to be introduced, or what rule is going to be broken. I mean, that's what seems to be the big thread here, is they love to break the rules.
Now we have a new boss in the teen timeline. You know, Lottie has been dethroned, and Natalie has taken over. So it'll also be interesting to see how that power dynamic works out in terms of the rules at play within the teen timeline.
That's like a game of chess. We'll see, you know. That's almost what it feels like too.
It sure does. And hey, in real life again, we did see our Yellowjackets cast on Celebrity Family Feud, which of course is another game. So let's watch a clip from our episode where we covered that, and then we can just talk a little bit about the crossover of gaming into real life and from the show. Cute, the matchups they had. Who was your favorite matchup at the podium, Emily?
I think it would have to be Lauren Ambrose and Courtney Eaton, just because when they approached each other, like she like gave her like a fist bump or something, and Courtney was like, "What, bro?" Like, it was so funny.
And she said good luck, and then Lauren Ambrose was like, "Oh, you're going down," and Courtney's so cute, like wishing her luck. I thought that was adorable. And all their little like dancing. Yes, definitely. Shift. What about you? What was your favorite matchup at the podium?
That was really a great moment. I probably watched that clip like 40 times before the episode. I set my phone down without realizing that it was just looping, and heard it a bunch of times before. So that was cute. But I also, when they had Melanie and Sophie come up together, I think they were the first pair that kind of took my breath away. I didn't expect that. I was like, oh, cute. So yeah, that was a good one.
They kind of matched too. They were both wearing pink.
Yeah, I noticed that too. Very cute.
Yep, they sure did. They sure did. That was a good matchup. I like that. And again, like, that was kind of fun seeing the counterparts of you know, the adult actor and the teen actors come together and face each other in a real life game. And of course, they don't interact on the show at all. So just seeing that dynamic in this form of gameplay was really fun. Did you watch it, Nicholas?
I haven't seen it, but
you have to watch.
No,
yes, watch. Warren Cole is so funny.
He's hilarious. It's fun. You'll enjoy it. You've got to watch it
right now.
Yes. One more clip that we cut. We also got a chance to speak with Luciano, who plays soccer in real life. So also interesting to explore the competitive nature of the actors in real life and how that translates, or in this case of Luciano's clip, doesn't translate on screen.
Everyday regular people stuff. Like,
right.
You play soccer, right? You're big into soccer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What position do you play?
I play striker. It's funny because when I first started filming, like I was telling my mom, like I play soccer, so I'm gonna be good. You know, I'm gonna use my skills. I'm gonna be fine. But no, I haven't used any soccer skills so far. So yeah.
Ironic that it's a show about a girls' soccer team and you're not showcasing your soccer skills. Well, you and Kevin are both athletes. He's a figure skater, and you're a soccer player. And I think it's very ironic that he is a soccer player in real life and didn't get to do any soccer, throughout his appearance through seasons 1 and 2. So a little bit of irony there. And of course, like Nat, now Javi is no longer with us. Where we wrap it up, Luciano mentioned he plays striker. The positions of the girls and soccer players,
they don't really specify a lot of them. The only one we really know for sure is Van's the goalie. Okay. And all the other positions, it's just kind of guessing.
I know nothing of soccer positions, so I defer to you both on any of the positions and how they come into play in terms of the role in the game.
Ty, to me, seemed like she was a midfielder. And midfielders are really important in the game of soccer because they kind of steer the game. They play both offense and defense, and they are very heavily involved in the ball play, which Thaisa is so competitive that it really doesn't surprise me that would be the position that she plays.
Right. Yeah. And so Van is goalie too. That's interesting. Is there any correlation you can see between the role of the goalie on the team and the role of Van and her presence within the wilderness?
That's interesting. I think about Van's character as, I think that's a good pairing because Van seems very stable to me.
Yes, dependable.
Yeah,
yes, dependable. Yep.
But also very quick at when needed. I mean, once she's recovered from the wolf attack. But yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense because she seems to be there for Ty when she needs her. Yeah. And it's not like the best analogy, but I think that makes a lot of sense to me that, as a goalie, Van makes, she's like the perfect choice, I would say.
Yeah.
Emily, speculation on what position Shauna would play.
I think Shauna was a forward. So I think Shauna, I think that's the term for it. I played field hockey. I played soccer for a couple years, but there are some similarities between field hockey and soccer. And to me, she seemed like she was playing offense. And it's a little surprising because people who play forwards are very assertive and not afraid to speak their mind. And Shauna isn't really that assertive. So that to me doesn't really line up with her personality. Van makes sense as a goalie. Thaisa makes sense as a midfielder. But I would expect Shauna to play defense, not offense.
Right.
In my personal opinion.
Do we know what position Jackie might have played? I'm curious if there's any correlation between her role on the team and then how that may have impacted her being the first one to lose the game out in the wilderness.
Well, she scores a goal in the game that we see them play. She headbutts a ball into the net. So that to me signified that she's probably offense too, because she was, we call it cherry picking, which is what you do when you stand near the goal, waiting for a ball to come your way so you can just hit it in. And it seemed like she was cherry picking big time when she headbutted that ball.
And that's fascinating because that speaks to Jackie's personality, kind of being the one out there in the wilderness who's not contributing as much, waiting for everybody else to do the work, and then, kind of coming in at the last minute and just expecting things to be handed to her. And of course, that didn't work out. She was seen as the leader out in the world before they were stranded, and then, of course, fell very quickly in the wilderness because she didn't have the skills, maybe because she's a cherry picker. I like that.
Yeah.
Interesting. Nicholas, any other insights or thoughts you'd like to get in on the concept of play and the series Yellowjackets?
I would probably finish by saying this show has played with my heart in a way that I was not expecting.
Same.
I'm not a big horror. I mean, I guess we could say this is horror, but I'm not usually a big horror fan, and I'm living for it. I'm here for it, and I can't wait for the next season to come back and press play.
Yes.
That's right. Like what you did there. I think we're all very excited. And of course, now the writer's strike is wrapping up, and we can expect the Yellowjackets writers to be back in the writer's room, which is very good news. And of course, now we hope for the same for SAG-AFTRA. So solidarity until that happens. But at least we're moving in the right direction. I think the entire fandom is very excited for that news. Nicholas, thank you so much for joining us. Of course, we are partnered with cordcutting.com, and having the opportunity to speak with someone who works at Cord Cutting is awesome. And I love the insightful intelligence in terms of the topic and how specific it is and how it really just plays so well into Yellowjackets. Again, this isn't a topic that we would have even thought of. So thank you for bringing it to the table and for coming out to play with us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I've had a lot of fun.
Awesome. Yeah, it's been great. So, hey, you're welcome back anytime. Thank you. And everybody, if you have not already, be sure you bookmark our Hive Hub page at cordcutting.com/Yellowjackets-Hive. And also subscribe to Cord Cutting on YouTube, youtube.com/@cordcutting, so you do not miss any exclusive content like this.
Okay, so until we spill again.